Hello and welcome to Get the Table, another wrestling roundtable discussion podcast with myself, Adam Wilbourn, and the Dadley Boyz of WhatCulture, where we discuss a burning wrestling issue. But before we get into it, if you're a fan of this sort of thing, make sure you subscribe to WhatCulture Wrestling on either iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from for daily wrestling podcasts where we review Raw, SmackDown, pay-per-views, we have interviews, more roundtable discussions like this one, and a roundup of the week, complete with a bloody good quiz, of course, on WrestleCulture. But gents, Extreme Rules is just a few days away, and I've got a question for you. I realise we've ruined this on numerous occasions. My mind is harkening back to, can WWE break the Fastlane curse? But I'm going to continue anyway and say, are we about to get the best Extreme Rules pay-per-view ever?
No, we're not. Extreme Rules 2012 was the best one for me. Like,
even though it had Big Show stepping through a table.
Yeah, I know, but like this is what I'm trying to get at, right? We're kind of in backwards territory with this 2019 edition because the undercard looked super stacked, but that main event is absolute toilet. Whereas in 2012, I kind of forgave that one of the worst finishes of all time, the one you've just mentioned, one of the worst finishes of all time, because when I was watching that undercard at the time in 2012, I was like more willing to forgive the absurdity and all the rest of it because I knew there was a genuinely historic, special, gruesome spectacle coming my way. So I anticipated everything on that undercard with like optimism. It's fair enough, get it out the way. I might enjoy it for what it is because I was actually really hyped. But it's the opposite this year. There's a super stacked undercard, as these shows often are, because the roster is so incredibly talented. But that main event is just rubbish.
Even though 2012 had the decision for Cena to go over inexplicably.
Like, it did take a lot of hard work, and this is a ridiculous sentence to say, to get Brock Lesnar back over in the wake of it. But I think in retrospect, that match is so harrowing and so brutal and such catharsis for someone like me who didn't really like John Cena as a worker and never got on with the revised narrative that he was a great worker all along, and we were just too myopic to see it. Like, never thought that, but he gave his body to that match, and it was total gladiator stuff. It's a gladiatorial. It's a hard word to say.
The reason why I asked this is because I kind of understand where you're coming from completely with Extreme Rules 2012, and we've had some good pay-per-views from in the Extreme Rules history. The reason why I say that more so than what does look like a fantastic card, and we'll get into that in just a second, but also because this is a huge weekend for wrestling fans. Not only, of course, do we have WWE Extreme Rules, the pay-per-view just before SummerSlam and just before we have the official taking over of Paul Heyman and Eric Bischoff, but you also have AEW's Fight for the Fallen, and of course, we properly get into New Japan's G1 Climax. So the reason why I asked that is, do you think WWE might get rid of some of the, let's be honest, bollocks that they've put on the other B-level pay-per-views?
I think the challenge for this Extreme Rules is to just try and be memorable. For you to ask the question, is this the best ever? And like before and during this podcast, me and Cedric were like, well, no, because 2012 had that Brock Cena match, I had Brian Sheamus. There's things that you can pull straight away from it and be like, well, no, that's the best because I remember that, I care about that. And the problem with these good to great WWE pay-per-views, some of them have stayed off a cliff. Stomping Ground started great and then just collapsed. But these well-paced, very good like WWE pay-per-views is that so little of it is memorable because so little of it matters. Even the great matches, even most things that Daniel Bryan does, it's kind of forgotten within a couple of weeks because you're not really allowed to cling on to it and not allowed to remember. What AEW are doing really well at the moment is they're making moments that people remember, that people cling to, things that already in the list-making game we're thinking about for our end-of-year lists, not just our so far in 2019. You know that like John Moxley's Double or Nothing arrival is going to be in your end-of-year lists and things like that. What are WWE producing on pay-per-view that comes anywhere close to that? And these matches, these like that we've got in front of us for Extreme Rules, like they're reminiscent of the ones we've had on other pay-per-views this year, but very few of them linger in the menu. NXT, thankfully, is like sort of separate from that. NXT does find ways to burrow into your psyche and make you just hold on to things. But I think back to something like Seth Rollins versus AJ Styles, a match I really enjoyed and didn't expect to, and yet already things have kind of gone over top of that have made me just forget all about that. And I'd like
Seth Rollins' Twitter meltdown.
I mean, that didn't help, did it?
No.
I'd like at least one match on this card, not only to be better than that match, but to be something that I'm thinking about in December or thinking about when we do is Extreme Rules 2025 going to be the best Extreme Rules ever? I'd like to have something of this card be our reference point.
And as you said, the pressure that they have on top of that with AEW and New Japan, it's not only saying, oh, is this as good as X pay-per-view from New Japan or this coming up with AEW or whatever. It is literally a side-by-side comparison across the next couple of days.
Yeah, but they've been face in the mouth of competition for several months now, and they delivered the main event of Stomping Grounds. Like, I don't think the competition elsewhere is going to like galvanize them into producing something like incredible. I've got no doubt the under to mid card at least is going to be really very good. There's some fire matches which we'll get into, but yeah, that main event is just going to stink, and it's going to make everything else stink as well.
And you pointed out to me the other day that, of course, next week we see the sort of official. I feel like there's been sort of a transitional stage, and this isn't just a hard reset as of Monday and Tuesday next week, but more and more we're seeing the influence of Paul Heyman and Eric Bischoff. Do you think that it will sort of bleed into this, of them saying, well, okay, well, if I want to start my Monday Night Raw like this, I kind of need this to go this way on the Sunday pay-per-view? You
would hope so. However, in sort of looking at this card, I'm not too fussed if a lot of these things are just paid off and Heyman and Bischoff are given their list of talent and say, like, you've got 6 weeks to get to SummerSlam. Here's the board. Do what you want with them. But I think, like, I think it was on SmackDown where we sort of used something like Nakamura and Finn Balor didn't need paying off this weekend because that is there for something that they can work towards something better. But most of the storylines here, nothing feels so, like, relevant and fresh that it needs much more than what we're going to get at the pay-per-view, which is good because you want, in the era of supposedly no rematches or less rematches, you want conclusive finishes at pay-per-views, you want wrestlers beating other wrestlers and then being like, right, on to the next thing. And I'm sure Bischoff and Heyman, I think anyway, would rather have that clean slate than think that, oh, we've got a lot of hangovers from Sunday that we kind of need to go back and retcon or fix.
Now, we've lambasted what is anticipated to be the main event, the winner-take-all match with Rollins, Lynch, Corbin and Evans, because, well, mainly because of the horrendous booking that has led up to it and the fact that arguably Becky Lynch has become tainted by association with Seth Rollins throughout all this. So disregarding that, and I realise I say this most of the time when we are looking ahead to WWE pay-per-views, on paper, the majority of this card looks really, really exciting, and all these matches given time could be, as you mentioned, as you said, genuinely memorable classics. So, what matches are you most looking forward to on Sunday?
Let's have a look. So it's just I've forgotten. Ricochet, AJ Styles. Like, I've needed AJ Styles to turn heel for some time now because last year he just plodded through a really repetitive and unexciting babyface run. He looks like he's got a new lease on life following the events of Monday Night Raw, and more often than not, he's got like a really underrated physical aspect to his matches on pay-per-view. Like the Samoa Joe matches looked like they really hurt. Same with the Daniel Bryan. Like, I was so impressed with the match that you had with Seth Rollins. Was it Money in the Bank?
Yes.
Because it was like a proper unvarnished fight. That was also a dream match as well.
Worked wonders for Rollins because he's that guy in spades, isn't he?
Absolutely. So I need something more than Ricochet can do some flips and he's really exciting and he can make Renee Young make that sound she always makes. And I think AJ Styles is the best opponent to deliver both the spectacular element of Ricochet's game and also just beat the snot, beat the piss out of him and give him some fire, which for me he's lacked on the main roster thus far.
I love the chemistry between them in the brief snapshots we've seen of this on Raw, where like AJ Styles, of all people, AJ Styles is the guy bringing Ricochet back down to earth. He's shooting him out the sky, and not because he doesn't admire that sort of stuff, but because he thinks, well, I can do that better, and I'm only going to employ that sort of stuff when I need to, because as Cedric says, like, I can beat you in a fight. Like, I've got the experience, I've lived the life that you're currently living, and I can do it better than you. And I think their chemistry, because this is what these pay-per-views are for now, isn't it? Like, they get 20 minutes, or they get, like, if it's kept tight and if it's kept succinct, I think the story they can tell together can be fantastic.
Yeah, I'm really, really excited for that match, and I feel terrible because I'm a huge fan of Ricochet's. But for me, aside from the high-flying aspect of it, it's all taken a back seat to the fact that we may finally be seeing WWE invest in the club. Obviously, the new contract signed by Gallows and Anderson hopefully will be a catalyst for change for them. And we've got big expectations for the three of them and potentially even more members joining.
Yeah, I mean, they've never really gone in all that hard on the club, have they? It's always like, I remember the brief run that the three of these had as heels against, I think it was John Cena and Enzo and Cass, which seems a million years ago now, doesn't it? But like, you know, they've never, I think it's because of Gallows and Anderson. I don't ever think Vince has ever seen much in them beyond them being a low card act. But like, you know, in defense of AJ Styles, for all, I think at times we were all very critical of that WWE title run, he's had it in him in this WWE stint to elevate guys. So of course he can elevate his best mates. And of course there's, you know, you get a t-shirt over, there's going to be guys on the roster that desperately want to wear that t-shirt and be part of that and be part of an act that feels current. So yeah, I'm kind of with you. Like, I feel it would like stifle Ricochet's momentum to take the title off him. But AJ feels like a hot entity again, and it might be best to go with him as a very credible like secondary champion.
To have AJ as United States champion and then just the nod and a wink to, oh look, Finn Balor's Intercontinental champion, etc., etc. What match are you really looking forward to?
I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I'm really, really up for The Undertaker and Roman Reigns versus Drew and Shane McMahon. I am setting myself up for disappointment because we all, before these Undertaker matches, and I'm probably his biggest critic, and I say I dread this because his ego won't allow him to just go 3 minutes and just do the spots. John Cena at WrestleMania of the year was a total surprise in that was all they were willing to do. If this is kept to 10 to 12 with Roman taking the majority of the beating and then a hot tag to The Undertaker for the big spots, and this is a really big this isn't all about leading to Undertaker Shane McMahon 2 at SummerSlam, I can't be more satisfied with this. I was really happy with Undertaker as the wildest possible surprise for helping Roman Reigns out when he's gone through all of the other people, Shane and Drew and Elias and all these other heels that have been like just putting barriers in front of Roman Reigns, and then having the Undertaker of all people appear to kind of help out and be in the mid card. I said this on like a Raw podcast. I love watching legends come back and then feature in the programs rather than just existing on this like other world. Like an Undertaker Triple H segment exists entirely independent of the rest of the episode of Raw, and I like seeing him thinking, no, I want to mix it up with the things that are actually going on. It might really help Drew. And yeah, Undertaker Drew, if that's where we're going off this, because they're going to win. The babyfaces are going over, and let that be the end of this like Shane McMahon omnipresence thing. If we're going to Undertaker Drew, that's a net positive there as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I think I'm hoping, obviously Undertaker, from what we perceive from all of this, is he wants to right the wrongs of the Saudi Arabia show, perhaps. And I think Undertaker Drew could be a really, really exciting SummerSlam match. And hopefully, I realise I say this every time the Undertaker has a match, hopefully rehabilitate that image of his. But on top of that, you've got the excitement of hopefully Kevin Owens just murdering Shane McMahon at a later stage. But it's intriguing, this random Roman Undertaker pairing, isn't it? Because there's a lot of speculation about what could happen here.
Yeah, at this point, I'd expect more physical activity from the urn than the Undertaker. But no, this match, it's going to be perversely entertaining. Fun if they don't. But the thing is, you can't ever give this company credit. Well, I can't anyway. That's just this is my gimmick at this point. But like, if you look at something like a close enough analog was the tag match at WrestleMania 34 with Shane and Bryan, where basically the entire fandom laid it out that Daniel Bryan would just sell that head to an almost harrowing extent and then do the hot tag for Shane to do the coast to coast, get the best out of both. And the opposite of that happened. Shane McMahon, diverculitis-ridden Shane McMahon, took a 10-minute prolonged beatdown, sucked all the air out of that incredible, intoxicating atmosphere, and made the match all about him. So, realistically, we could see The Undertaker and Shane McMahon reform Weezer. Just wheezing the way through something really, really dull. But if they can book it right, like the other fantastic tag team match at WrestleMania 34, get the best layout guy on that match, and it could be like a really fun spectacle that feels big time.
Yeah.
Because I'm sick of the eerily quiet arenas.
Yeah, it feels like Raw. It's full of stars, doesn't it?
Yeah, like this will get over big.
Philly as well, this. So
this should get over really big. So that should be a reason to savour it in itself.
The match I want to talk about, again, is tinged with a little bit of guilt, because I was the man who openly wept at WrestleMania when Kofi Kingston was finally crowned, you guys know, as I'd been campaigning for quite some time, given a proper single.
It was all about you and not Kofi.
Exactly.
Wilbourn Mania.
That's why I was crying. I wasn't excited.
Wilbourn Mania.
Me and Sidgwick having you on our shoulders, like, he's done it, guys, he's done it.
It was still the emotions overflowing from the Iconics winning the tag titles. No, but having said all that and having really enjoyed it, having Kofi Kingston as a bit of a change as WWE champion, there's always that little voice in the back of your head that says things that you don't really want to admit. And I really, really, really want to see Samoa Joe choke the life out of Kofi Kingston. I mentioned it before.
Fickle.
With
Fickle.
Rey Mysterio's son. So I've clearly got something there that I might need a bit of therapy for. Yeah, I sense that probably it may not happen at Extreme Rules, but there's a lot of speculation that it could because of this reported injury from Kofi Kingston. If you're going to take the title off him and you don't want to make him look too weak in defeat, I think use the fact that the fans kind of already know that Kofi's going in carrying an injury, and the fact that Samoa Joe is a brilliant bastard, and potentially put the WWE Championship on Samoa Joe, because it's what most fans are crying out for now.
I'd love it. I think he's the most consistent talker in the company, and he's Teflon to the terrible booking and taking a lot of high-profile losses. So he's a very, very safe pair of hands with a title. But I'm starting to wonder if because if I'm Brock Lesnar, I do not want to muddy my hands with that dreadful main event. And Paul Heyman doing that thing where he's basically put his reputation on the line as giving out spoilers. I could very much see Joe being the wrong guy at the wrong time here, and Brock doing a cash-in akin to Seth's. And maybe not, so Joe doesn't have to absorb a loss, but if Kofi is injured and has to take time off with a title, maybe Brock just inserts himself when they're both knackered, just cleans up, cashes in there, takes Kofi's title, and then that's Kofi's injury write-off without Joe having to suffer the indignity of getting pinned on a pay-per-view yet again. If he's going to appear, I sense it might be there instead. I can't, as much as I would like to, see Joe leaving this pay-per-view with a belt.
What do you think?
I think Brock's going to cash in on Seth in the main event because there's nothing, as I've said before on a podcast, there is nothing remotely in the works that feels like worthy of SummerSlam other than Brock versus Seth 3 or 4 or whatever it'll be at this point. Brock versus Kofi, I just can't see. I don't think Kofi's quite as good as a worker as Seth. I don't think he could excel in the Brock Lesnar match as much as Seth could. I don't think he's perceived as much of a star as much as Seth. And I think there's an inbuilt story that we don't give them enough credit for the long-term story. They've been like casting the sense of dread throughout the entire Rollins title run. And I think that'll be such a waste if they just like do a gotcha with Kofi Kingston.
Is there any way to salvage that supposed main event between Seth Rollins, Becky Lynch, Baron Corbin and Lacey Evans?
You could replace Lacey Evans with someone who can work, like Asuka. No, I think this is so much more preferable to like 2 consecutive singles matches again. Mm-hmm. You might be able to get something perversely entertaining out of it. Like, this is a company that I've given huge criticism towards their production team because Arn Anderson and Dean Malenko have left this year. They've been replaced by Abyss and Sanjay Dutt, and I think Jarrett's a producer now. And I've seen absolutely nothing to suggest that the personnel involved in that team has any direct impact. I think the personnel who go into this job are just told, right, this is the WWE way, and this is, you are to learn it regardless of what you can bring to it. It doesn't work that way around. But whomever laid out the Ronda Rousey match again at WrestleMania 34, whoever can craft that drama and use Paul Heyman's old maxim of accentuate the positives and hide the negatives, they need to be tasked with this to get anything out of it, because there's a lot of moving parts for a performer as goose green as Lacey Evans. She's going to need all the help she can get, and I'm worried that it's not only going to be what the fans don't want, it could be almost catastrophic.
This may sound like I'm simplifying it a little bit, but for me, the way you salvage this is you gimmick it in some way to not go on last. Becky and Lacey opened up Stomping Grounds, and obviously that was to free up the Lacey Evans thing later on in the card, which we didn't know at the time. But that match felt substantially more energetic than the Money in the Bank match because you had a hot crowd that were keen to see the top stars. Seth Rollins at WrestleMania. There's recent precedent for these big matches going on in what looks like a surprise spot, but in reality is one best served to protect the talent at hand. You have advertised it as your main event, but there's no reason why you can't sort of start the show hot with like the heels trying to deck them backstage and it just spills out in the rings. Like, is this happening now? And then you've kind of got it out of the way. The crowd will be on its side because they'll be hot for it.
And you've got a lot of other options for the main event.
Yeah, you've got things that if like, not that Corbin and Lacey are going to win, but if there's another kind of worst case scenario, so the match is just a disaster, everyone comes out of it looking bad, it's forgotten by hour 2. It won't make the show feel so lopsided if it's been a great pay-per-view that is then tanked by a stinker of a main event. I think there's like, they've shown this year that they can actually be quite canny with how they book this, you know? I'm
inclined to agree with that because, Stomping Grounds, whenever I go to talk about it, I have this immediate reaction of, oh God, Stomping Grounds. Whereas in reality, for the first hour or 2, we were all really enjoying it. Mm-hmm. It's just the main event left such a bad taste in our mouths that it's almost tarnished my entire memory of it. Another match which is really highly anticipated for Sunday is Murder. Braun Strowman versus Bobby Lashley in this last man standing match. What on earth are they going to do after how are they going to follow what they've done, I should say?
A total overkill hoot. It's the only way they can do this. They're not really nuanced characters. They're not really versatile workers. They are just 2 massive hosses, and I'd like to see them just kill each other in a sprint. The stupider, the better.
I've retracted what I've just said. Becky and Seth go on last after these go on in the semi-main event and break the ring. So like they do the big superplex.
Well, like Vengeance 2011.
Yeah, they've got to work that daft main event, and like you're so sort of bewildered by the visual of having to see them work around the fact that the rings are just a hole in the floor with posts on the floor. That it sort of becomes like they have no choice but to fight in the crowd, and like you've got posts that are just on the floor. So like Seth Rollins just picks one up and smashes one over his back. But yeah, something destructive, something wild, like more fireworks. I know that sounds daft, but like more fireworks, more big, blustery, ballsy, stupid stunts. It's never not got Braun Strowman over.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah.
Like, there's never been a situation where he hasn't done something like that, and then the next day we're all like, that was incredible. You're watching a looping gif of it 10 times over. So more of that. WWE don't get this stuff wrong. Smash cut too.
One final thing I wanted to mention is, of course, the main roster singles debut of Alistair Black against Cesaro.
Re-debut. After they botched it.
Yeah. Properly this time, they probably would say. Can this salvage those god-awful promos?
Yes, because they're not promo guys, they're wrestlers. And if given the freedom to express themselves and a decent allocation of time, it can't not be a banger. As cynical as I am, it can't not be a banger. Like, they'll have great chemistry. Alistair Black is got a great character that can like really build towards like a really hot finish when that stoic facade gets like softened and battered, and then like the fire comes in the last 5 minutes. Cesaro's a great worker. Alistair Black's a great worker. Yes, I will say that this is going to be awesome.
So, like, I'm normally the optimist and Sidgwick's the pessimist. So I kind of, they need it. They both really need it.
You know what I hate? The whole pick a fighter. It's just bollocks.
You could have said all of it. Like, I hate all of it. Like, this Alistair Black, I've said this before, goth gimmicks are not really for me, but Alistair Black, I found quite a palatable presentation. The whole package was really quite good, and they've potentially done away with all of it. Is he going to come back as the Alistair Black that we saw months ago? Surely not. Surely there has to now be tweaks to his character, because certainly the gimmick has been changed.
He's a hothead now.
It's weird because
He's a little radgy.
Well, wouldn't you be if you've spent a month in a shed or a cleaning cupboard or wherever it is he's been?
One of my main introductions to the Alistair Black character was that fantastic feud he had with Velveteen Dream, where he just refused to say his name.
Oh, God, that's the glory of it.
Yeah, and it feels a million years ago from especially this version of it. I feel like they both need it. I'm going to side with Sidgwick on this. I'm actually less optimistic about the quality of this match, kind of because of what you said. The idea that like WWE production will overwhelm it, and this character in particular will be overwhelmed by it. But I want it for both of them. I like them both enough that I want them to have like a pay-per-view banger that tells the world, that announces to the world that they're both still valuable commodities.
So that match could be absolutely fantastic. Kofi versus Samoa Joe, as you mentioned there, is
could be
really,
very good.
Really intriguing. You've got the fascinating no-holds-barred tag team match. There is a way to salvage that last chance winner-takes-all mixed tag match. We've got other matches here we haven't even got into, including Drew Gulak versus Tony Nese, which was brilliant last time.
The SmackDown tag title match could be the sleeper hit of the night, because what Bryan and Rowan did with Heavy Machinery last month, and then the triple threat we saw on SmackDown with the individual members, and obviously Bryan is Bryan. I just, like, all of those guys are great. Heavy Machinery are being elevated by everyone they're working with. The New Day, they're always, sort of so consistent. I think that could be, again, if it goes on early in the card when we're still just up for the whole show, I think that could be one of the best matches of the night.
Not only that, you've got the handicap match with Bayley taking on Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross, and
that's going to be rubbish.
The rumoured return of Sasha Banks with all that, and if they book this correctly, they could develop not only a feud for the SmackDown Women's Championship heading into SummerSlam, but also potentially a feud between Bliss and Cross. You've got, as we mentioned, Ricochet versus AJ Styles, last man standing match between Braun Strowman and Bobby Lashley, and we haven't even had time to mention the Revivals versus the Uso, which is just guaranteed to be brilliant. Looking at that card now, and the way we've discussed it, have I managed to convince you at all that this could be the best Extreme Rules ever?
No.
Well, it was worth a try. Right, let us know your thoughts on Extreme Rules in the comment section below, or on Twitter at WhatCultureWWE. Well, actually, they can follow all three of us. You can follow Michael Sidgwick at
Sidgwick.
You can follow Michael Hamflett at
Michael Hamflett.
You can follow me at Adam Wilbourn. You can follow us all at WhatCultureWWE, and make sure you subscribe to What Culture Wrestling, either iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from, for daily wrestling podcasts. Enjoy Extreme Rules. Join us for the stream on Sunday. My thanks to the Dadley Boyz. Thank you for watching or listening, and we will see you soon.
Tra.